make sure to give my dad a 5-star review.
Make sure to like and subscribe to his YouTube. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
And it's not, we spend a lot of time investing in the quality of life for our service members and their families. And that's not where a lot of this money is going. It is going to fund this war in Iran that we don't even know what the end game is, what the purpose of it is. So I think we are going to see a lot of people who are already hurting, programs that help lower your energy costs by, weatherizing your home or helping you be more energy efficient being completely eliminated. Programs that help low-income people who struggle to pay their electric bills to pay them being eliminated. So I think we're really going to see our safety nets that are already frayed break.
Hey, welcome back, faithful politics listeners and watchers. I am your political host, Will Wright, and I'm joined by your faithful host, Pastor Josh Bertram. What's going on, Josh?
What's going on, Will?
Hey, and today we are joined again by Jennifer McClellan, the Congresswoman. She represents Virginia 4th District and previously served nearly 2 decades in the state legislature. In 2023, she became the first Black woman elected to Congress from Virginia, and this is her 3rd time to the show. So welcome back to Faithful Politics.
Thank you. It's great. It's great to be back.
Yeah.
Yes.
I will, just give you a quick prop on the top because, I just appreciate you wanting to come on our show. I mean, who are we? We're just a bunch of podcasters, right, from Virginia. But this is your 3rd time here. So that says something. And before that, your predecessor, Donna McKeechan, came on. So I'm hoping to extend, this relationship to even Josh's congressperson, whoever that is.
Rob Whitman. I reached out. They haven't gotten back to me yet.
Yeah. So I'll just jump right into it. I'm going to ask you, just on the top. I mean, well, you were in D.C. Have you been to D.C. this whole week?
Yes, I came up Monday.
Got it. I got it. So you weren't here in Virginia when we all had to turn on our heaters, like earlier in the week.
Well, I was over the weekend. Yeah, I had to turn on my heat.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, it's wild.
What's up with that? I don't get it.
Know, climate change.
Okay, well, that wasn't my question. My question is, we were initially supposed to talk to you back in January. And through a course of just you being busy, because you're a congressperson, a lot has happened. But I wanted to just quickly review the questions I was going to ask you back in January, and maybe we can still talk on some of these. But January, we were going to ask you about premium tax credits, the ACA, Greenland, NATO and alliance stability, Venezuela capturing another president, tariffs, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And now today we are facing a whole new slew of issues. So I'd love just for you to start off by, what is the state of our union, our Commonwealth even?
The state of our union is chaos. And a lot of us on the Hill trying to stay focused on community in the midst of the chaos. That's definitely where I am. But I think some of the issues you touched on are still very relevant and affecting people, and I still hear about in the district. So the enhanced premium tax credits did expire in December. They have not yet been reinstated, although we did pass through a discharge petition on a bipartisan basis, an extension in the House. It's just sitting in the Senate. And we have seen, I saw a recent report that 83,000 Virginians now have dropped their insurance under the Virginia marketplace because they can't afford their premium anymore. I have some constituents who tell me what those premiums have jumped to. So that I've got one, Lester Johnson. If you ever go to Mama J's, he and his mom own that restaurant. His family of 3 went from paying $600 a month to over $1,000 a month. And there are all kinds of stories throughout the district, throughout Virginia and the country on that. The tariffs have been invalidated by the courts after a lot of millions of Americans paid more for just about everything, from groceries to gas to housing to toys to technology. And the administration is giving refunds to the businesses, but not the people who the businesses then pass those costs on to. So there's legislation pending in the House that would say give a refund to the consumers that ultimately paid for those tariffs. We'll see where that goes. Venezuela seems to have settled down. I don't know. It's just not in the news anymore. But now we're at a war with Iran, with an attack on Iran. Absent any evidence, even according to our intelligence community, there was no evidence of an imminent threat on the United States or our interests. So now we are trying to figure out what's the strategy, what's the game plan, what's the end goal. Is the Strait of Hormuz open? Is it closed? Is it blockaded? It depends what day of the week. We've seen the president threaten war crimes on Easter Sunday. We've seen him threaten to kill a whole civilization. Very concerned about where that's headed. Cost of everything is still too high. And
Yes.
yeah. So these are the things that I hear the most about from constituents who either call into the office. Immigration, I still hear about concerns around ICE and what they're doing in our communities and the impact it's having on our communities. I've done a bunch of roundtables in the Richmond area. So these are the things that I hear either through calls into my office and emails, or when I'm in the district talking to constituents. These are the issues that I hear about.
Yeah, that's quite the laundry list. And you sit there and you hear it and you're like, man, we have a lot that we have to figure out. And I want to concentrate, though, for just a few minutes on the budget, the 2027 budget, right? So there's a proposed significant increase in defense spending, but cutting non-defense discretionary spending by about 10%. At least that's what the data I have at this point. So that sounds abstract to someone like me. They're like, oh, great. The government's cutting 10%. Oh, great. The government's taking on $1 trillion in debt. Awesome. Obviously, I know that's not good, but it's like we hear this kind of stuff all the time, and then it just kind of rolls off of us. Which isn't a good thing. I would love for you to kind of bring this to reality. What are the people in Virginia's 4th District and maybe even beyond, what are they going to feel in that trade-off when the defense spending goes up, the non-defense spending goes down? What are they going to feel? Where are we going to feel the impacts?
Everywhere, frankly, everywhere, because you can't look at that budget in a vacuum. So remember HR 1, which the president called the big, beautiful bill. I call it the big, ugly bill. So a lot of the cuts from HR 1 will take effect January 1st. So we've begun to feel them, but not a lot. So I'll give you an example. The Medicaid cuts haven't taken effect yet, but we have seen rural health centers either close or close the whole departments in anticipation of those cuts, because we saw in Lynchburg they closed their labor and delivery department. Augusta Health closed 3 health centers in sort of the western part of the state. In our area, we have 10 hospitals in Virginia at risk of closing. One of them down in my district in Emporia. So they're really struggling to figure out how to backfill those cuts. And then our healthcare safety net is really broken now. I met with Health Brigade, which is the oldest free clinic in the Metro Richmond area. And they not only are they struggling to continue to pay to provide services to their patients, but there are patients who they don't even see coming in the doors anymore, who they're worried about, or the stories that they hear because they just can't quite meet their needs. So that all is going to get worse, because for Health and Human Services, it's about a 13% cut, and it's cutting things like parts of the agency that deal with maternal mortality. We have a maternal mortality crisis in this country, and there are programs that were designed to monitor and track those deaths, the disparities between Black and white women, because Black women are 3 times more likely to die in childbirth, and then put policies in place to fix it, they're getting eliminated. In higher ed, we're seeing, my mom, who was the first member of her family, she was the third youngest of 14 children. She was the first member of her family to go to high school, let alone graduate. She ended up running the TRIO programs at Virginia State University, which are 3 federally funded programs that help first generation or at-risk high school students go to college and then succeed in college. So that she spent almost 30 years helping kids like her go to college and succeed. That program is proposed being eliminated. Environmental protections that help ensure that pollution doesn't further hurt our public health. The departments dealing with that and employees dealing with that are being cut. So there's just a few of the things, and what's frustrating to me, and look, I was a member of the Armed Services Committee the last Congress, and what the president is asking for is above and beyond even what what we call defense hawks think we need. And it's not, we spend a lot of time investing in the quality of life for our service members and their families. And that's not where a lot of this money is going. It is going to fund this war in Iran that we don't even know what the end game is, what the purpose of it is. So I think we are going to see a lot of people who are already hurting, programs that help lower your energy costs by, weatherizing your home or helping you be more energy efficient being completely eliminated. Programs that help low-income people who struggle to pay their electric bills to pay them being eliminated. So I think we're really going to see our safety nets that are already frayed break. And all of the programs to help address affordable housing, childcare. President said, we can't afford health care and child care. And he said, we can't afford Medicaid, Medicare, and child care because we got to fight this war. That's not the right priority when Iran was not an imminent threat to this country or our national interest until we attacked them.
Congresswoman, I don't know what kind of conversations you are having, not only with your constituents, but, friends, family, or whatever. But I know that when I'm having conversations with people I know, even with like some guests, like before we hit record, like we recorded this episode with one guest, I won't mention the name, but, before we were recording, we were just sort of reflecting a little bit on where we are as a country. That you look at the news and you're just like, what? The Navy secretary just got fired, and now there's like all this action, in the Strait of Hormuz, and you're just like, what is happening? I mean, like, what do you tell people? Like when they are just turning on the news, pulling out their hair, and like, I don't know what to do because it seems like the world is falling apart.
First, take a breath. I think.
Wait, were you telling that to me? You were probably just.
Well, everybody. I think first, just take a breath to settle yourself and then focus on what to do. I tell myself that all the time. Sort of my 3 rules, or the advice I give, which is sometimes I'm really good at giving but not following, is I put my own mask on first so that I am taking care of myself so I can respond. Whether that's like just take a minute to meditate, go for a walk, like put the phone down and smell the roses, whatever I need in that moment to kind of pause and calm down. Because part of what's happening is everyone is so full of anxiety, and especially those who doom scroll, that your reaction comes from a place of anxiety and anger and fear, and not from a place of, okay, let me do something constructive. So that's the first thing, is just pause. And also, if you give yourself, a stroke, you're not going to be able to do anything. Second, focus on what you can control and trust God or the universe or whatever you believe in to handle the rest. You will find there is enough within your life that you can control to at least fill your day and calm your anxiety. So if it's you can control you calling your member of Congress, writing your member of Congress, telling them how what's happening in Washington is impacting you or what you want Washington to focus on. If protest is your jam, there have been lots of protests that have let people know, I don't like the direction that this is going. If it's I'm going to go and try to support or volunteer an organization that's being harmed by these policies, then go do that. But there are things within your life that you can control. Vote. I mean, that's the number one. Everybody's got to vote, and I'll come back to that. That is your power in affecting the outcome of our government. And do not let me forget to come to that. And then the third is get some joy in there. Find something in your life that you are grateful for and that you are joyful for and hold on to it. And when you get to the point where you're angry or you're anxious and don't know what to do and you're trying to pause, think of that. That sounds like not a lot, but it is. And I think for me, people coming and telling me their stories, whether it's here's how the tax credits, how the tax cuts, or the Medicaid cuts are impacting me. Here's how the loss of the tax credits are impacting me. Here's what's happening in my community when ICE shows up at this apartment complex or at the courthouse. Here's how much I'm paying for groceries. Fun fact, the price of ground beef, a pound of ground beef costs more than working an hour under the federal minimum wage. So telling those stories to members of Congress or your state legislator or your local government leader helps us be your voice and helps us do our job better. And then, of course, voting in every single election. Because I always say, in a government by, of, and for the people, government will only reflect their perspective and then meet the needs of the people who participate. And we have seen the more people that participate, the more pushback that Congress or this president gets. We've seen him back down sometimes. He backs down quietly, but he's a lot louder when he's pushing forward. But when he backs down, he does it quietly. So I do see the people making a difference. They just can't give up.
Yeah, I really appreciate that because, one, I think it's just good for me to personally hear, and it's probably good for your constituents to hear too, that, we're not trying to ignore what's happening, but we are trying to self-regulate and so we can actually address it if we get burned out and we don't put our mask on, right? But you brought up something and I want to kind of switch it to DHS. So DHS is still shut down, at least at the time that we're recording this. And
yeah.
To me personally, it's had very little effect. I have had to travel a few times and didn't really have any. I mean, we've got a great airport here in Richmond, so it wasn't a big hassle. But that's not the experience for a lot of people that have been affected. So I'd love for you just to talk to us, why is DHS still shut down?
So DHS is shut down because Speaker Mike Johnson and the Freedom Caucus of the House Republican Caucus would rather keep it shut down than hold ICE and Border Patrol agents to the same standards and accountability that every other law enforcement agency in the country is held to. That's the bottom line. Because the Senate passed unanimously a bill to fund DHS with the exception of ICE and Border Patrol. And what gets lost in the conversation, H.R. 1 funded ICE and Border Patrol for 3 years. They got up to $200 billion, which is enough to fund them for 3 years. So this is not a fight about do we fund ICE and Border Patrol. They're already funded. This is a fight about do we hold them accountable when they murder American citizens? Do we hold them accountable? And not just, when they murder people, period. Do we hold them accountable when they hold people in detention centers under conditions that are so bad that over 40 people have died in their custody? Do we hold them accountable when they say that they are only going after criminals, but they show up at courthouses or on the way to schools or when people are on their way to worship and detain people and deport people with no due process? Are we going to require them to show their badge and not wear masks because anybody can put on a mask and claim that they're ICE or Border Patrol and say, open the door? They don't want to do any of that. And as a result, they're saying to TSA and FEMA and our Coast Guard, well, you might not get paid because we just don't want to do that. Or some members of the House Freedom Caucus say, we don't want to fund DHS unless we pass a bill that would require everybody to prove their citizenship before they can vote through documents that cost money. If your name is different today than on your birth certificate because you got married or any other reason, you've got to go show the chain of custody of your name to be able to register to vote. And we want to end mail-in balloting, even though the president of the United States votes that way. So that's why DHS remains. They're working. They're just not getting paid, and that's why.
Man, that's really, really, really good. And it's good to hear from someone in Congress what's going on, the perspective there. Obviously I know you're from the Democrat perspective, but it's good to hear what's really going on, I think, from your perspective. I really appreciate that. You mentioned the SAVE Act, right? You mentioned the SAVE Act, and you mentioned the difficulty that it could propose to people. And I would love for you to kind of help people understand what the SAVE Act is. Why aren't you? Because what I hear, right, what you might call just hot takes on it is, well, hey, what's wrong with requiring people to give their photo ID? That just is making, elections safe. Right. Again, that's what I'm hearing. I'm not saying that that's what the SAVE Act is about. But what's wrong with just, we just want to make elections safer. We want to make sure only citizens are voting and not anyone who's not a citizen should be voting. And we want to make sure that the right people are able to vote. Citizens. Okay. So that's what I'm hearing from one side. And then from another side, I'm hearing it's racist. It's got, different agendas behind it that are not gonna restrict all the voting and make it very difficult, and even potentially make it so that women have a much harder time voting or even taking away the female vote. Can you tell us what's going on with the SAVE Act? If that's true, the stuff I said, why is it true? How do we know that that's true?
Yeah. So the Save America Act is not about limiting voting to citizens because that's already the law, right? It is illegal. You can go to jail, and there's very, 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 very little evidence that anybody who is not a citizen has voted after many years of study. Because this whole bill is not new. It's been at least 10 years that they've been trying to do something similar. So that's the first point. What the bill does, it doesn't just say bring a photo ID. We did that in Virginia, but we said that if you don't have one, the state will make one for you and it'll be free. It's not just your driver's license. What the Save America Act does is it requires very specific government issued photo IDs. All of them cost money. And I took my oath of office on the Bible that my father kept his poll tax receipt in. Because my father and my grandfather had to pay poll taxes to register to vote. And what the Save America Act basically says is whether it's what you have to pay a real ID doesn't even count. And I don't know if you've gotten your real ID, but it's not easy to get one. That doesn't even count. So you got to have a passport, or like there's a whole list of IDs. And the only one that doesn't cost anything is if you have a military ID, but you have to present it in person. And if you are on the USS Gerald Ford in the Persian Gulf, it's going to be very difficult for you to use that ID to register to vote or to vote. And even if you're registered now, if this bill passes, everybody would have to re-register. So that's number one. Number two, most of the IDs that you need a birth certificate for. And if your name is different on your birth certificate, you've got to walk through and show, well, how did your name get from here to there? Congresswoman Joyce Beatty told an incredible story about when she went to get her real ID. Same thing, your name has to match. And she showed up with her birth certificate, but it was her maiden name. And they were like, well, your name now is different. And she's like, yeah, because I got married. It's like, well, we need your marriage certificate. So she had to get a copy of her marriage certificate from another state. She brought that. It's like, well, this name is different. She's like, oh, yeah, because I forgot I was married before. Well, we need your divorce decree. So she had to go get her birth certificate, her original marriage certificate, her divorce decree, her second marriage certificate, and then she got her real ID. She'd have to go through that whole process again to register to vote. Second, the bill also tries to eliminate mail-in ballots, which our military use, which homebound people use, which the elderly use, which rural people that live in rural communities who are far away from the voter registrar's office use. And what frustrates me the most about that, President Donald Trump uses. And so it's okay for him, but not for everybody else. So that is why the Save America Act will put barriers in the way of people voting. When we have fought so hard since the beginning of this country, the very first vote ever held in Virginia in 1619 involved voter suppression. And we have been fighting voter suppression in Virginia and the country at large ever since. And every time we make progress, there's this backlash that involves voter suppression, violence and intimidation, and propaganda. And here the propaganda is, well, all of these people who shouldn't be voting are voting. There's no evidence to support that. As a matter of fact, there's evidence to prove that's just very, very rare. And if they do it, they go to jail. So that's why I oppose the SAVE Act. Again, as somebody whose family had to fight tooth and nail for the right to vote, I'm going to fight tooth and nail any efforts to roll back anybody's ability to vote.
You know, I know that you're not necessarily the whip, but like, what's your sense of like, and I'm only asking because we spoke with an election expert, Jessica Huseman from VoteBeat, and we were asking her about the SAVE Act, and her assessment was, even if it did get passed, it would be a nightmare to get it through the system by the midterms. Because there'd be training and all kinds of other stuff. And even if they were trying to shove it through, it would just be reckless, and it would probably, really, really affect the integrity of the election. So are you sensing that it could potentially pass, or are you thinking it's going to be pushed really hard, but there just really aren't the votes?
I think it's going to be pushed really hard, but there aren't the votes in the Senate. The president has said he won't sign another bill unless it's the SAVE Act, but I think he's backed off of that. There's one senator, I'm forgetting his name, but a senator from Utah who is adamantly pushing Thune to put it on the floor for a vote. But Thune's we don't have the votes to break the filibuster on it, and we probably don't have the votes to pass it. So I think this week, folks have pretty much realized it's dead. But with this crowd, You never know. It's like, there's something over the past year and a half now, you've heard this word called reconciliation. And reconciliation is a process that the majority can use to cut the minority out of the process through a budget bill. That's what the HR1 big ugly bill was. So they're trying to do a DHS funding reconciliation bill, and there's a member of the House and a member of the Senate who are trying to push the SAVE Act as part of that. But the Senate rules don't allow policy changes. They only allow budget changes in that process. So they're still going to try, but I'm hopeful that they're going to fail.
Yeah, this might be, I don't know, inside baseball, but I just don't know how like the rules work. Like, could they change the Senate rules to make it work?
They would have to change what some want them to do is completely eliminate the filibuster. There is not the appetite for that, or make it be a talking filibuster. Because the way the filibuster used to work is you literally had to stand on the floor and talk the entire time. And then they put a rule in place that said if you don't have the votes to override the filibuster, then that counts without having to speak. They could try to change the rules to force you to talk the whole time. Senate Democrats are prepared to talk forever on this. And they're not going to get rid of the filibuster because it protects the minority views. Like you may not have the majority, but our Constitution protects the ability of everybody to participate in the process. And so there really isn't any appetite to get rid of the filibuster.
I'm going to switch topics to Iran because, since, as I mentioned at the top, we originally were going to talk about Venezuela and the capture of their president. And since then, I don't know if the president is just emboldened or not or what, but he went after the president of Iran, a person that I think that if it had been a different president in the White House, like, could have made an argument to the American people, even if there wasn't an imminent threat, right? Because like that's sort of, you get the bully pulpit, you get up there, you make the case, you say, hey, we got to really do this. We got to stick together. And, here's our common enemy. But he didn't do that. He decided to take military action, continue to take military action. And I'm curious about like, how does all that, the military use of force in Venezuela and Iran, like, comport with like the powers that a president actually has?
So that's an excellent question. It's a complicated answer. But so Venezuela technically was not a military strike. Technically, it was a law enforcement action because the president of Venezuela, I know, had been indicted for crimes in federal court. And what the Justice Department would say is we use the military to apprehend someone to bring them here for whatever. That's what they claim. But it was a very narrow, very strategic incident that you could argue was not an act of war and did not need congressional approval. Now, I don't know if I agree with that, but it was clearly regime change, but it was, we're going to get rid of the president, and then the vice president is going to be more compliant with our wishes. So even though she's just as bad from a human rights perspective, from how she treats the people of Venezuela, she's good with us, so we're going to let her stay. That's what happened in Venezuela. Here, so the president can only order a military strike on another country if there is evidence of an imminent threat to the United States. If they attack the United States, like Pearl Harbor, if there's an imminent threat to the United States, our service members here or abroad, and our national interest. And then they have 60 days, and they have to consult with Congress. So there's something called the Gang of Eight. which are the Democrat and Republican chair and ranking member of the Armed Services Committee in the House and the Senate and the Intelligence Committees. So president has to consult with them, can do this strike, and then has 60 days. And then they have to withdraw or get approval from Congress. None of that happened. Here, what I believe happened is President Benjamin Netanyahu, for several years, has been trying to convince an American president to attack Iran. Iran is governed by very dangerous people who have funded terrorism around the world, who can never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon, but had not developed a nuclear weapon, was nowhere close to developing a nuclear weapon. And the Pentagon has said that, not Jennifer McClellan. The Pentagon has said that. The last strikes against Iran knocked back any potential to have a nuclear weapon or build a nuclear weapon decades, according to the Pentagon. And I think what happened is the president decided, I had success in Venezuela. We can do this and have regime change. It'll be very quick. We'll be very successful. It'll be over. I'll be a hero. Not understanding how complicated a military strike in Iran would be, not understanding the implications of killing the Ayatollah during Ramadan without that imminent threat, and the implications of that Ayatollah being replaced by his son, who was younger and more radical. And definitely underestimated Iran's response. They have been waiting for something like this for years. And so you have a president, a secretary of defense who have no clear exit strategy, who have no clear plan, who thought we're going to go in, we're going to bomb, it's going to be over, they're going to, capitulate, and none of that happened. They don't know how to get out of this mess. That's where we are with Iran.
Well, thank you for explaining that. I appreciate it. I would like to think a little bit more about this war powers resolution, right? So, and I'm just wondering from you, as much as you can, kind of what do you think about this war powers resolution? Is this a good thing that we let presidents go and enter into these military conflicts, even if they talk to certain people? Congress is supposed to declare war, but they haven't declared war since what, World War II? And yet we've been in these massive...
No, actually, we kind of declared war with Iraq.
Oh, gotcha. Yes, you're right. We did.
Yeah,
we did. Yeah. So, but all these conflicts, right, since World War II, I guess since that one notwithstanding, then none of them have been a declaration of war by Congress, right? But we've been in conflict, losing hundreds of thousands of American lives. So it's what do you make of this? Maybe for our listeners, this war powers resolution, because everyone go, well, the Constitution, but it's actually not the Constitution that's laying this out.
It's both.
Oh, it is?
Really?
Okay.
It's both. So the Constitution says that Congress declares war, but the president is commander in chief. So as commander in chief, you have certain emergency powers. Again, if you're attacked, you can respond. And if there's an imminent threat, you can respond.
9/11 being a key example of us being attacked.
Yeah. And so what the War Powers Resolution, so it was passed in 1973 to fix the problems that we saw with Vietnam and Korea, where as commander-in-chief, the president ordered troops somewhere and Congress never declared war. So what the War Powers Resolution of 1973 says is, if there's an imminent threat, then you can deploy service members for a limited engagement for up to 60 days. And you have to consult with Congress, and you have 60 days to resolve it. And at the end, and it can be extended for 30, an additional 30. But at the end of that period, if Congress does not declare war, you have to bring our troops home. Now, you can always do defensive, right? But this is for offensive if you are sending troops over to attack. And that was designed to say it's Congress's job to decide, are we going to send our men and women in harm's way for an extended period of time? But you give the commander in chief the flexibility to respond to emergencies. And the reason our founding fathers wanted Congress to be the one to declare war is because history is full of examples of kings and queens who said, I'm having problems at home, so I'm going to go start a war. Or I want more territory just because I want territory, so I'm going to go start a war. And it's the people who suffer. And
That's right.
and as the people's representatives, Congress should be the one to decide when we're going to go to war.
Just changing gears off Iran, I want to talk about AI for a moment.
Hitting all the hits.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I know that you've written about it in like your newsletter and stuff. Yeah. Like AI seems to just kind of be all over the place. And it seems, some people really enjoy it and are productive. And then other people, like to use it for AI slop, i.e. the White House. So I'd love for you to just like talk about like what is the impact of AI and like what are you hearing or studying about it and how it's kind of affecting, our country?
So I think, AI has a wide impact. Everything from, use Chat GPT to like I used it to I uploaded a picture and said, what would I look like if I were an American Girl doll, right?
Yes.
My daughter was curious. But it also has been used, we just saw, to tell someone who wants to shoot, engage in a mass shooting, what types of gun and bullets to use. It can be used to help in healthcare and, energy deployment. It has a wide variety of uses, but just like any tool, it can be used for good and it can be used for bad. And so my concern with AI is there are a whole lot of policies that we have put in place to protect people, to protect the environment, to protect communities, and they should apply whether the action is being done by a human being or a computer. And so that is where we are struggling as policymakers to figure that out. The bigger impact, though, is AI uses an incredible amount of energy because all of the data the data we're using right now to record this and for you to post it out, the data everybody uses on every internet transaction you use has to be stored somewhere. Well, AI generates and uses a ton of data. And that's why we need all these data centers. Well, a data center, one Microsoft data center uses enough electricity and energy to power the city of Seattle. Yeah. Yeah. Like it is
That's
scary.
crazy.
I can't remember the exact amount, but like every Chat GPT, like the one that I did with the American Girl doll, used a ton of energy. And so it is causing two things: the proliferation of data centers much faster than we ever expected because we need more. And they need to be powered. And that is exploding energy demand, which is making it harder to meet and for consumers to keep the lights on affordably. And I haven't even gotten into the water that they use because to keep those machines, the computers and the servers from overheating, a lot of them use water. So then there's implications for, water use. So we're grappling with all of that, but we're behind. And at the same time, we've got this race with China for AI dominance that's as equally as important as the race to who's going to get on the moon first. Because we want a lot of the AI, whether it's the algorithms used for it or like we want the computing and everything, we'd rather have it here and controlled by American-based companies and people than in China. So it has national security implications. It has healthcare implications, it has workforce implications, and we're several years behind. I mean, I remember I was at a conference in 2018 where someone was talking about the rise of AI, and I remember sitting in that conference saying, none of our systems are ready for this. And the House had its first congressional hearing on AI in 2023.
Jeez. That's really, really, I don't know. I guess disturbing is the thing that comes to my head, but I there's so many things to feel like scared about right now. And it's like, I'm just trying to like take it one at a time, one existential threat at a time, Congresswoman. That's all I can handle. And I just, it's like, but the AI thing, honestly, like Iran feels existential to me because I don't want a nuclear war to start. And I don't trust our president with those capacities. But AI, I appreciate that. AI is existential, and I don't quite know why. I understand that it could take everything over. Yeah, go ahead.
So so I'm on the Energy and Commerce Committee, so we talk about AI a lot, and especially because I'm on two subcommittees that deal with it: the Energy Subcommittee and the Communications and Technology Subcommittee. So we had a hearing with some AI company CEOs, and there was this 23-year-old kid who dropped out of MIT to develop an AI business, who had spent time in China, and he said, we have to ensure that human beings control AI and not the other way around.
Yes.
And as a joke, I said, so we really do need to be worried about the age of Ultron. And he's looked me dead in the eye and he said, yes, ma'am.
Wait, what? Like, one, he knew what Ultron was, so that's great. Two, like he understood kind of like what Ultron could do. So like, I didn't mean to jump in here, Josh.
No, it's so good.
You're saying that like if left unchecked, like AI could become
we have seen robots. We have seen instances where AI and AI powered robots lied, where they engage in self-preservation and tried to overcome shutdown protocols. Because remember,
they threatened to blackmail.
They threatened to blackmail
the person, like send out emails of personal information and stuff like that.
Yeah. AI is learning from human beings
at an enormous, unimaginable pace.
Yes. And so just like human beings needing ethical and moral and legal boundaries, so does AI.
I absolutely agree with that. And I'm thinking, then this is just a question for you, thinking about the energy issue. I mean, what do we have? What solutions are being brought to this energy issue? Because energy cost is just going up and up. And most people, they're just now becoming aware of the data center issue. Me being one of them, like, connecting to this. Oh, wait, that's an enormous amount of demand, like triple demand. And it's the same amount of people. But the demand is going up. So it's like you can't keep going at that rate.
And again, even before AI, right now, the average household has 21 connected devices that use and process data, which is a mind-blowing number. And so even before AI, we had the issue with data. AI just explodes it. So there are two ways I'm going to answer that question. One, data centers, we are starting to say you need to pay your fair share of these costs. So in Virginia, the State Corporation Commission, which is what regulates the electric companies, just approved a new electric rate that data centers will pay for the electricity that they use, so that is not spread out over you and me. So we're trying to explore more of that, make them pay their fair share. When they build a data center, say you need to build your own little mini power plant so that you are generating energy that you need. One good example, and try to encourage them to use renewables. So we've got a metadata center in Henrico County out by the airport. It's 100% renewable energy. So they have a goal of being 100%, net zero, which means they don't. The net of the carbon that they produce is zero. So things like that are important. Making sure that you're not concentrating a lot of data centers in one area and putting a lot of demand on a regional grid, because the electric grids are kind of serving a region and not the entire company or country or a little neighborhood. So that's one side. But we've got to generate a whole lot more energy. And that solar and wind, clean energy is the fastest, cheapest, and cleanest energy to get on the grid. And we were making a lot of progress in building more of that. And then this president who hates wind for I don't know why, he absolutely hates it. He and the Department of Energy came in and cut back, declared war basically on wind and solar energy, and are trying to get more natural gas and coal, but it's slower, it's dirtier, it's more expensive, it's less efficient.
Do we know
And so
why
that's
they're
part of
doing
the-
this? Is it just like lobbyists? Is it just corporations? Is it
I
just they
think
want to
part of it,
destroy the
they just-
planet?
Well, I don't think they want to. I don't
I'm being silly.
They don't believe in the connection between fossil fuels and climate change for whatever reason. They don't believe that. They just really love coal and natural gas. And part of it, I think, is because of the donors that they have. Part of it is because some parts of the country really rely on those sources for jobs and don't care about the impact that fossil fuels have on public health and the planet and everything else. And we fight this every day in the energy committee. And so we are trying to figure out, how can we generate more? How can we control demand through things like energy efficiency so that we can reduce demand as much as possible? The president's trying to roll that back. And then how can we build more transmission? Because once you generate it, you've got to transmit it from where you have your power plant to where you need it. And we haven't built new transmission in this country in like 20 years. So we're trying to do some permitting reform to get those transmission lines built more quickly in a way that still balances environmental protection and public safety.
Yeah, that's quite the challenge. But I'm also, very I'm optimistic that, great Congress people like yourself can actually accomplish stuff like that. And, my last question for you is, this year we are going to be celebrating 250 years, America's birthday. You have had quite the path getting to Congress. You are a history maker. And I'd love for you just to kind of just reflect for a moment, like just on what that means to you. And I'm only asking, I know it's April, right? But we're probably not going to talk before July 4th. so like, I'd love for you just to kind of opine on like what that means to you.
Yeah.
And maybe more importantly, like, are you going to the UFC or the IndyCar race?
So in redistricting, I get Williamsburg and Jamestown. So
Nice.
I'll probably go there. But the idea that the power of government derives from the people, and the idea that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, were revolutionary. And those ideas are only 250 years old. And it was an experiment that we weren't sure was going to last. And yet, and we went from that to a constitution that created a government by, of, and for the people. But the ideals upon which this country were founded didn't apply to everybody. I am struck that Virginia in July of 1619 was the birthplace of modern, American democracy. And a month later was the birthplace of American slavery. And the history of our country has been, how do we first reconcile the ideals upon which we were founded with the reality, and then how do we make those ideals true for everybody? And we have made extraordinary progress. I would not be sitting here as the first Black woman not only representing Virginia, representing the capital of the Confederacy. I will represent next year the Jamestown, where this started. But every time we have made progress towards that goal, there's been that backlash that involves violence, propaganda, and voter suppression every single time. We are in that backlash right now. And how we move forward in response to that backlash will determine if the great American experiment survives. Because history will show, James Madison studied every form of government throughout human history and came up with the Virginia plan that formed the basis of our Constitution, because he said, what makes governments fail? What makes governments fail is when the worst instinct of human nature overtakes government and harms the people, and then the people fight back. And so how do we stop that? We create a government where the power comes from the people and that there's a check on the worst instincts of human nature. Well, right now, we have a Congress that refuses to do its job to check the worst instincts of the Trump administration. We have a Supreme Court that we have to, so far it's doing its job, but that's not enough. And so ultimately, it's going to be up to every single one of us to decide, do we want to achieve that more perfect union, or are we just going to give up and go the way that every other government and every other society in history went?
Yeah, I think that's really well said, Congresswoman. Thank you for saying it. How can people connect to you and what you guys are doing there in the 4th District? To just kind of give them a way to contact you guys.
Absolutely. So my website is mcclellan.house.gov. You can sign up for my newsletter, and you can find where to follow me on social media. I'm on X, Facebook, Threads, Instagram as Rep McClellan. And then I'm on Blue Sky as mcclellan.house.gov. I haven't gotten on TikTok yet.
What about Threads? You're on Threads?
I'm on Threads. Yes, Rep McClellan. And then
no Truth Social account?
I am not on Truth Social, no. No, I am on YouTube, though. I'm on YouTube.
Want somebody?
Yeah, there are too many. There's so many. Every time we think we got them all, a new one comes.
So
we're
many.
like, is this real or is this going to last? So you can follow me all of those ways. And then you can find out how to call the office or email the office through the website too. And we'll be out, I'm doing this on the official side, but the filing period for the election starts May 1st. So there are other ways you can find me on the campaign side, but both on the official side and on the campaign side, I'll be out in the community. I'll be out and about in the current district, meeting constituents, doing town halls, doing constituent services, and then I'll be campaigning in the new district, getting to know those new voters and asking everybody to hire me for another 2 years.
Wait, so on the redistricting thing, it's not really a question on the redistricting, but will Josh be a part? Will he be your constituent?
I think you're Hanover, right?
I'm Henrico.
Oh, Henrico. Where in Henrico? Probably not. If you're in the Rob
Western
Whitman part.
Henrico.
Yeah, no. I will lose the northwest corner of the district. So right now, the line between Rob Whitman and I is around like where Virginia Center Commons was. It'll go
Right.
a little bit east. So I'll have the eastern half, so I won't have you. But I'll lose sort of Scott's Addition,
Gotcha.
the first council district in the city, and then down a little around Bon Air and Chesterfield. But I'll pick up Williamsburg and half of James City County, and I'll go to Danville.
Well, there you go. Oh, my goodness. Well, thank you so much, Congresswoman, for coming on and spending time with us. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. I always love it. And we'll do it before a year.
Absolutely. And to our viewers, guys, make sure you go check out everything that Congresswoman McClellan is doing. See what's happening and see what's going on. Take part. Go vote in your own places where you're at. Coming up in this midterms, it's a big, important election. And until next time, guys, keep your conversations not right or left, but up. Thanks.